Welcome to the Culture Roundtable, brought to you by Culture and Sports. I'm Jeremy Piasecki. I'm your moderator today, and I'm also a panelist. My experience uh, is vast, and it's most applicable here in starting and developing local youth sports programs along with national youth sports programs. And so that's my background. I'd like to introduce Asante Sefa-Boakye. He also has developed local youth sports programs in the San Diego area, and he has also been developing a national sports program in Ghana. Asante, thanks for coming out today, and can you please share your experience with us?
Hey, good morning. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Jeremy. It's been pretty amazing 5 years being this founder of my organization, Black Star Polo. It's a nonprofit organization designed to give aquatic opportunities to African, really communities of color. And it started off with myself having a background swimming and playing water polo in high school, college, and getting some chances to play abroad in Europe and even landing with a team in Brazil. So that was my initial just conquest of spreading the joy of playing this game to my father's homeland in West Africa, Ghana. And then it developed into saying, wait a second, we could actually make a national team for water polo in a West African country. And once I was confident enough to establish a team and teams and a league in Ghana, I said, let me go ahead and do the same thing in my hometown in San Diego. So now I can say I've got two successful programs in San Diego and in Ghana running. Of course, to get them involved in water polo because I'm biased, it's the greatest sport in the world. But more importantly, to get more people of color to feel safe and confident in the water. And it's been an amazing experience. And I'm happy to be on this panel to share some stories, insight, wisdom, and to learn a lot from the other panelists as well.
I'd like to introduce Dia Syed. Dia is heavily involved in early stages volleyball in Alberta, Canada. But I think more importantly, she runs an organization focused on girls in sports. Dia, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so again, happy to be part of the panel. Thanks for reaching out, Dr. Jeremy. I appreciate it. And I'm really excited to echo the sentiments of Asante. I'm excited to learn from either of you as well. Yeah, so I am currently the early stages coordinator for Volleyball Alberta. So I run early stages programming and recreational programming for ages 6 to 17. So volleyball is very much a growing sport. And I'm a little biased to volleyball. It's the greatest sport in the world, but that's my opinion. But it's a very much a growing sport here in Alberta, and we have a lot of competitive opportunities. But we're growing the rec space and trying to make it accessible for all. So partnering with organizations here to create accessible and affordable opportunities. And this kind of rolls into girls in sports, where I founded a company about 5 years ago, and it was just based on research. It was simply people ask after I did a small amount of research. It wasn't huge. People asked, what are you going to do about it? And so I created a multi-sport program that delivers quarterly camps and also week-long camps to introduce girls to different sports. Not only addressing the barrier of just getting a safe space where girls are able to try something such as hockey, mixed martial arts, um, anything from football, basketball, everything like that. But it's also affordable as well too. So parents aren't running around trying to put their 6-year-old in three different sports and they all cost $500. And now like it's the kid is only stuck to these sports, not simply because they don't want to, just simply because the financial opportunity is not there. So it's been a pretty cool. And we also do in school programming as well too, focusing quality education. Um, so yeah, it's been a lot of fun in both realms and working in the rec space and having that crossover because rec and sports tend not to cross. And I'm in a very unique space here in Alberta where they're crossing over. So yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Ricardo Barrios Cobas. He has extensive experience in youth sports, and he's working on an extremely interesting project right now. Ricardo, can you please tell us a little more about that project and your overall experience?
Well, hi, and Dr. Jeremy, thank you for having me here with with this great panelist. Well, yes. At this moment, I'm a sport lawyer, but as well, I'm currently serving as first director for the fourth Youth South American Games Panama 2026. Actually, that's one of the games that belongs to the Olympic cycle, both in South America and South America is from Panama to Argentina. And actually, we host this Panama this year in back in April, and we have 15 countries, 2,000 athletes, and we have like 800 staff, and plus that, we have here in Panama around 5,000 people just related to youth sports games here. And the other thing is that I also work for the American Football Federation in Panama, and I also own like an organization that is based on American football and flag football as well. So we've been developing that and back since 2018 in my province. We call it province, not state. So yeah, and actually it because in Panama, just to have a knowledge about this, American football was not for everyone. It was just for some elite schools, private schools. So what we did back in 2018 is to create this program so we can provide this opportunity to the rest of the kids from different part of the country, and that's part of the project that our federation is working on currently. So yeah, it's been great. It's been a lot of work, but so far we're going there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ricardo, for sharing that. I'd like to actually ask the first question to Asante. Why is developing youth sports programs, why is it so important and impactful, not only for you, but for the communities that you serve?
This is kind of perfect with a conversation I'll just admit, I was having this conversation with myself, just about why you have why it looks so important, working with kids. And I think to be in line with the time, Father's Day was just recently. And what I've noticed working with my community, I mean, of course, my cultural background is in Ghana, and then working with different Black communities here in San Diego, I'm seeing the impact that it has for kids to be taught, mentored, lectured, coached by someone that looks like them. And I see how they gravitate towards that representation. And I think the longevity of having youth programs is proven and shown again and again because truly these sports programs are like a father figure for a lot of these kids. And when you're working with communities who do potentially come from broken homes or you know, the only thing they have to look forward to is a sports practice. It goes a long way. The same way somebody having a father would benefit from. So that's something that I've been able to witness firsthand. Having kids, address me as coach, but then their parents walking up and saying, "Hey, he's also your son too. So make sure, or not make sure. Thank you for, watching him as well." And I think that's the importance of it because working with the youth, and I think there's a study in San Diego, we're a big military Navy community, and a former Navy SEAL told me that they specialize in going to like eighth grade conferences and freshman year, um, whatever the word is, high school career days, because that age group if you can capture their fascination, if you can capture their interest at that age group, they'll be locked in for life.
Mhm.
And the kids that we've worked in, my first group, they were all 12U. So maybe 10, 11. Our oldest one was probably 14. Now, fast forward 5 years later, some of those kids are now 19, 20, and they're locked in because we've been having programs with them for the past 5 years when they were young and they see the benefits and they see it's worthwhile to invest in. And I think you just get so much more of a long term investment when you work with the youth because then they want to give back to the sport, the program that was there for them. They love having a coach that cares. They love having a program where they can see their friends, get fed, learn something new, and go home. And it's just like a home. And I think that was the biggest point that I was really speaking about, just the fact that these youth programs, it provides that, that family figure, father figure, mother figure, it doesn't matter, just that role model space for the youth. And I think that's what carries them out through the rest of their life. I think a lot of people can relate to knowing who their first moving coach was, their first influential teacher, and it's normally the ones in high school and maybe elementary school.
Now, did you also see that, Asante, in developing the local and national programs in Ghana?
100%, 100%. Man, our biggest program was at the newly opened Jackie Robinson YMCA probably 4 years ago. We worked with a school of Somali refugees, and taught them all how to swim. They were, what, probably age from 8 to 15, that age group. And working with the younger kids, you hear comments like, "Wow, you look like my uncle. Hey, you look like my," just like just funny things like that. But that's what locked them in. And other teachers would, "Hey, be quiet, listen up, focus up." And then I would come in and say, "Hey, dude, lock in." And then the attention is there. And then same in Ghana. Man, it's just the representation. It's huge. And just seeing the way that they're more inclined to listen and be a part of it because they see themselves in their coach, it happens. And I like being able to know that I think the kids are aware, the sport is a cool thing, but wait a second, this guy is actually like, a mentor for us, a real person that we can depend on. And it's not just about the sport, it's not just about the programming, it's now developing the safe space where they feel comfortable enough to share. Like I had just had a kid say, "Hey, we just graduated from their, I don't know, it's not high school, but they had their last secondary school graduation in Ghana. And they just said, "Thank you so much for X, Y, and Z, for taking care of us, letting us go." And it's just, it's something I've definitely been able to see in San Diego and in Ghana and even in other countries where, they can feel if you're committed to a cause, they can feel it. And if you're committed to genuinely building up the youth, they will always be receptive to it.
I can I jump in, Jeremy?
Of course, of
Yeah,
course.
that brings me some memories from when I started my program back in 2018. And at that point, we were starting this project in this state, in my province actually, and we were doing some tryouts just to make sure, like, okay, what are we gonna do? So what we decide first is like, okay, let's go and visit all the schools around, and we take a football helmet and a shoulder pad, and we brought it with us to the schools. And at some point, the kids were going crazy every time they said, I want to try, I want to try it. At some point, I don't know why or how they did it, but they were like jamming against the wall, like, wait, that's not the way you have to supposed to do it. And then, well, the thing is that once we went to the tryouts after that, they started showing like kids from different ages. And at some point when you start a program, it's kind of difficult because you don't know, well, at least in my country, if you're going to have like all the kids from the same age, or if you're going to have, and how do you deal with that part. And then at the end, it was like you have like a big family with kids from different ages, and then you have to adapt everything. At some point, you have to divide it like, okay, all who are above 12, you go to the right, and those who are this way, under 11, that's let's say this way. And there were kids at some point that they were like, oh, they told him like, "Oh, you're my uncle," and they say like, "Oh, you're like my dad. I never had." And like, and at that point, that's it tells you, because like at some point you become your family. They became your family or your parents, and that's crazy. So that's how we actually the impact that you create on kids. And at some point as well, it's like every time we were at the stadium and we finished our practice, this hot dog car outside the stadium, and they were like, "Coach, it's missing something today." Like, no, we have everything here. Like, no, you have to buy the food for us, and, and we need the hot dogs and all this kind of stuff. And they knew that every time we went to the stadium, at some point they were getting a hot dog or something like that. And what's the craziest part of this is that sometimes that was their first meal during the whole day, and that creates an
Uh,
impact on them, and in this, and I believe it. It's crazy.
100%, man. And that's something that I don't know. I mean, granted, in America, we have our ups and downs, but the best day in the USA is still our worst day. Our worst day in the USA is still somebody else's best day abroad. And, you know,
Mhm.
I try to make sure when they come to practice in Ghana, it's pick them up, great, take them to the pool, great, give them food and go back home. And just because that's what I learned as a college athlete. And now we're hearing that, wait a second, some of these kids when they come to practice, that might be the only meal they get that day. And it's such a shift where we are just operating off of, hey, this is what I did in high school and in college. We go to practice, we get food. The end. That's just normal. But to them, it's like, no, you're actually providing so much more than a space to practice. Like truly, uh, the first meal of the day it's wild. And then, hey, coach, we're not feeding them. I said, oh no, they can go home to their parents and get food. Or why isn't the school cafeteria feeding them? And it's not like that outside of the country. It's not like that in different areas and rural areas. So it was granted, I'm the coach and I gotta make the programs and the plans and I have to lead the way, but it's very much been a learning curve from day one to present day. I'm still just aware of not serious you have to take it, but how aware you have to be. Because listen, that's what has made the Ghana team still push forward with the same kids is because we may have potentially provided that same meal of the day. And that's a different motivation you receive from your players, your athletes, the youth, whatever. If you're providing that, it's not service, but that family space, the coaches, assistant coaches are now the uncles and the friends, and it's just, so you're right. That hits that it's maybe the only meal they're gonna get that day. Maybe it's the only thing they're gonna look forward to that day. Some aren't in school and they don't have friends. So their teammates are their brothers and sisters, It's
Yeah, you shift from being coach to be this a psychologist and to become an uncle,
oh
a
man.
dad,
Yeah.
whatever. And once they turn like teenagers and they
Yeah.
start getting like boyfriends or girlfriends, oh my God, that's crazy. That's even crazier.
And yeah.
Sorry, I'll interject too. Although that was really like, so we've done in Canada, we have in especially in Alberta, there's a program called Free Play. I know the owner. He actually does after school programs, and he does feed the kids. And that program has shot up. Like it was a small program, and it's interesting because it's only local to Edmonton, which I find really like because it's so impactful when it comes to just creating a safe space for sport. The food is very, very important, but also life skills. And I think just kind of reflecting on what you guys are saying as well too, they when kids find a space that they can not only be themselves but provide guidance on how to be a leader, how to talk to people, how to be kind, empathetic, and all that kind of thing. And that role model echoes that sentiment when you may not have somebody who has that at home or in the community. Kids gravitate towards that. And it's very interesting because I coached my daughter's school well, I did. And she's 7, so she's very young. But I did some of the older kids volleyball program, and these kids were off rocker. And their listening skills just weren't there, and it was really hard to kind of rope them in. But it was interesting because I unfortunately couldn't commit as much time to that program as I wanted to, just because I run so many other programs. But every time I walked into that space, it was like their attitude changed 180. And it was a very interesting thing because I'd had younger coaches come in and I come in, so she was swearing today. I'm like, oh, how'd that happen? This is like a 9-year-old swearing. And then suddenly I walk in and you could call me the strict coach, but I was the one walking out with hugs. I was the one walking out like there was a grade 6 grad and the guy had the autograph thing and I saw him like 5 times and he's like, hey coach, can you sign my can you sign this? And it was simply providing that space where they can learn to be human. It's really cool because that's what I absolutely love about sports. It doesn't matter if it's highly competitive or just recreational. You're learning to be a human. How many times I've had conversations with my husband who's in sales, and I've been in sales before too, where these things translate to real world, and he's talking about a sales team as I'm talking about my U18 club volleyball team, and we're going through the same experiences, and and so having a space where kids can learn to be successful, and it can be done through sport. Not only are they learn to be healthy, but mentally and physically. And I think that's a huge um, draw for the community and impactful because it provides better citizens going in and community change makers, barrier breakers, walking into these communities. So it's so cool to hear programs that Ricardo and Asante you've run because these kids are going to walk in. Not only did they have their first meal a day, but they're coming out better humans and they're going to impact their community in ways that you might never know, but it'll be positive because of the impact that you've made in your community. And that's what a lot of times with my programs that I run too and the coaches that I train, it's like, how are you making better humans? We don't, we don't have like my programs are run, we don't feed the kids. It's just the space I'm in. But I always challenge my coaches, what are you doing to make them better? Like, yeah, they're better volleyball players. Yeah, they're better XYZ, whatever sport we're doing. But how are they better humans? And how can they take what you've taught them into the community and then perpetuate that? So,
Yeah, since you're talking about um, making athletes better, helping humans, the human connection, along those lines, let me ask you, um, if you could expand a little more about what engaging youth athletes in your programs looks like to you,
mhm.
if you could dive it more into that.
Yeah. It's kind of twofold. So if I was walking to a club, a highly competitive program, it's a little bit different because they're there to really learn the sport. They're there for good feedback. They're there to, get to that workout. And if they feel like they're not growing in different ways, then even regardless, you could be the nicest coach in the world, but they're probably going to walk away from the program. However, that being said, there's also the rec space where really it's about fun. Like if I would walk out of some of the programs that I've taught recently, the school program, and I would say my kids' volleyball skills, they did increase, but maybe not as much as I wanted them to. However, I had them walk back and go, "Hey, when's the next program? Can we do this next year?" I'm like, "You were there like 3 times." It's like, "Yeah, but I still had fun." I'm like, "You know what? That's a win." Right? And were they the best kid on the court? Absolutely not. And so I think the biggest factor is fun. And this also applies to competitive as well, too. If the kids aren't having fun, and this is why we're in sports too, we enjoy it. We like to have fun. I didn't pick up jujitsu as an adult to get banged around. I truly enjoy the sport. I'm having fun. And so walking into a sport program and we remove that, you're not going to be able to engage the athletes as much as you want. They're not going to want to be there. They'll eventually fizzle out, right? There are the few exceptions that push through that piece, but creating a sport program where you have your sport, like a lot of times what I'll do is I'll again, I mean, I speak from the rec space as well too. So when I put this out, this is definitely from the rec space, but I always try to get the coaches to engage the athletes on a like, okay, here's a brain break. How are you walking outside of the sport? Like I have 9-year-olds. Are you doing a fun tag game with them, but maybe sports specific skills? as well as just providing connection. I think another part of that, like there's like I think four C's: community, connection, competence, and confidence. And so providing that connection as well too. So having a 30-second conversation. Hey, how are you going? Like, how are you doing? Even the parent walks in, your kid's doing great. How are you? And it doesn't have to be long either. Ideal on average with like, 15, 20 athletes on an out of school program. And then as well as when in-school programming happens, having those little conversations. We talked about the World Cup. I sat down, took 5 minutes to talk about the Canada and Qatar game. And, there was that break, the guy broke his leg. And we had this like little mini discussion. We took 10 minutes away, or it was about 7 minutes away from our total time. But these kids have saw me throughout the year. So this is more of like a sit down, hey, let's chat. We have this time. And then building in the connection, the confidence as well too. So helping kids understand that you are you come and I have somebody come in and says, hey, I'm terrible at this sport. I'm terrible at volleyball. I'm terrible at this. I'm like, probably, probably are, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to help you. Right. And confidence is knowing where you're at and knowing 100% that if I walk into a golf course, I never was a golfer. I would get par 3,000. That's what I tell kids, right? Like I am terrible at golf. So I walk into, but I know that about myself and it's okay. And so with the kids, it's like, hey, you're bad at volleyball. That's okay. That's why I'm here. And suddenly it breaks down this barrier of like, oh, okay, I'm in the right space. I want to be here and I want to be a part of this program. And then finally, the connection piece in terms of just who being human. I tell my coaches, I always ask 3 questions when I do interviews with coaches. I ask them about 3 things about themselves. Like, what are your hobbies? And I've learned volleyball coaches have all the same hobbies, by the way. Um, but I always look for those people that like, oh, I like to read books. I like to do art. I know, Jeremy, you've been following me on my posts and stuff like that. I'm an artist myself too. And so that's like a whole different side of me. And I'm definitely into comic books. I'm definitely into anime. I'm definitely into manga. Like that's like a whole nother life that I have. But the barrier that breaks and that thing that breaks down when they see my custom made Gojo shoes. It's like an anime character that I've drew. It's like, oh, you know this character? And suddenly we have this, and I've had teachers come up to me and go, this person would never participate in gym class. And this is that kid who like you could tell like headphones on, has like their little anime keychain sitting on their backpack, and suddenly this person's fully engaged because Asante, to your point earlier about the representation, an artist is standing in front of them teaching volleyball and she's involved in sports. Like that crossover doesn't happen. Right. And so I tell my coaches that like find something, right? You can solve a Rubik's Cube, you can play a board game, you can do like whatever, something that the kids know. Because I promise you they'll be the most engaged kids in your space. And this goes all the way from competitive to rec, because I've even had a competitive team, same thing. I had about two. One was an artist, and the other one was they made clothes and they sold it at farmers markets. I do that. I sell my book and I sell my art at markets. So we had a really cool conversation on how to do that. And suddenly, like within 3 practices, she was my best performing player and the person who's always there on time and that kind of thing. So I just think understanding like when you have coaches in your program, say you're human first again, and this happens all the way to competitive, but ultimately when a 9-year-old comes into the program, they may not like volleyball. They may not like football. They may not like soccer. They may not like, they're just there because their parents signed them up and they need something to do, or they need an after school program because they have nowhere to go. And so it's like, but if they can connect on the human level, then you have it. So that's something that like it's been very successful at growing my program. And you can tell when the coaches don't do it because they're the coaches that don't tend to get a ton of registrations if I announce the coaches, which is very interesting. So
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, Dia. And you
That's
really, um, focused on the human connection. And I found that in every single space that I've ever coached, that human connection is actually the most important. So I've coached rec sports, I've coached gosh, when I was super young, like learn to swim programs. I've coached, serious, very competitive youth sports, high school, secondary school sports. And then I've also coached, professionally, in Europe. I, developed national sports programs in Afghanistan. So I have this wide ranging of experience. And it doesn't matter how they were enticed to come originally. It might be a free meal, or it might be an opportunity to try a new sport, or it might be an opportunity to come with their friends and be social. There's hundreds of reasons why people come, but I think that athletes will be engaged and they will continue to stay with that human connection. And Ricardo already spoke about it. Asante already spoke about it. Just the small things that they mentioned about engaging athletes, and I'd love to hear from both of you a little bit more about that as well.
From
Yeah.
my
Oh,
side,
go
well,
for
Yeah.
it.
sorry, Santa, sorry. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, just let me piggyback off of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
last
yeah.
comment what Dia said, and then I'll pass it to you
Yeah, yeah,
because I
yeah.
like just the comment on you have an artist being your coach. It's funny, before I took this on, I was I guess semi full-time performing artist. I would do hip hop, do local shows, and as much as when I am coaching, I'm putting the coach hat on, I want to be the coach. I would always get the question of, "Hey, coach, can you rap for us?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as much as it's like, "Hey, man, I'm here to coach," that was just their thing. They said, "Okay,
Mhm.
can we?" And then if I didn't rap for them, they would just walk on the pool deck and play their music or play my music, And then it's like, okay, well, if that's what it takes, sure, why not? And I was that kid. I was that kid that my parents just signed me up for swimming and I hated it. I didn't like it.
Mhm.
It wasn't fun, but the different motivation was, I think, my older brother played, so it was like, all right, I can see my older brother, and then seeing other people of color. Janai Kerr was the local Olympian, and then another player from Spain. So then I was like, all right, I can follow that. But what I found, what you said, that art, finding something, finding a cue, I don't know, man. You have to, you know, the job is to teach the sport, but the secret is to use something outside of sport to keep them
Mhm.
involved. And yeah, shout out to you. That's accurate. All right, Ricardo, it's all
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you, because, well, for start, at least in my country, or how I deal with that part, like if you go for a non-competitive or a competitive group of players, when I was coaching like kids I got from 6 years until 11, and from 12 to 17, and then you have the other guys, because we have like under 23rd, yeah, things like that here in Panama, categories. And at some point with the kids, I remember that I used to take like, okay, today is school season. We're gonna start the school season next Monday, and I have practice during Sundays. So what I did is like, okay, I just make some bags with school stuff like pencil, pens, paper, all these utilities and whatever, it's like, okay, you put it all that on there and just give it back to the guys at the end of the practice. And these guys and these kids were crazy going around and like, oh my god, I have this, I got this. And you have like whatever, it's like only for you for to have fun and to start like a new season for school. And one day at the end of the practice, it was ice cream day, and I used to brought some ice cream. And the
Yeah.
other day we have like candies or things like that. It's always something around that. Is I remember one day I brought someone to dance, and they were dancing all around. Well, it was crazy, yeah. And when I go to the competitive teams, what I did is like we divided in academies and clubs. The academies are for us are those who are non-competitive. They are just being to be tough. If you need to learn something and you don't want to be like in a competitive, because
Mhm.
sometimes here in Panama we have like those who wants to go and practice at, let's say, flag football. those who want to practice flag football, and because their mother want them to practice something and not be on their phones. So they take it to you and okay, this is like kindergarten. I just leave it there. I'm coming back in 2 hours. And then you have the other parents who they actually and really wants their kids to be competitive and to compete in leagues. So that's the why we divided in that, so like in academies and clubs. So those who wants to be competitive, because I talked to them, I talked to the parents, and I told them like, okay, do you want to be like a competitive, or do you want to be just like hanging out, just to learn, to have here, to work out on something, it's like sports and doing activities. And they say, wait, once they tell me that, I divide it. And for those who are going to the club, what I used to do is like at least twice a year, I travel from Panama to the US to participate in a tournament. I've been twice to Boston, I remember, and twice to Mexico, to Cancun, to play flag football with my team. So they were always engaged, like, okay, I need to be the best, I need to do this, I need to do that. And at the end, usually what I do is like, okay, I'm going to raffle a full ride for free for a kid who's gonna
Mm.
be who try to do their best. So they were always competing each other or trying to be the best. Like, and it was not only about being good in sport; it was good about being in academics. Their grades they need to be great. I told them like, school is first, then is this. That helped me actually to make them improve their notes, their grades, and everything. So because they were like at some point they just prefer to, let's say, play soccer or play flag football, and that's it, and they don't want to do anything else or nothing to do with school. But because of this method, what I did to like being traveling around, they engage themselves into be better, in the academic, trying to be and if I have a complaint from their parents, oh my God, that would be bad for them. They used to know that, I remember one parent telling me like they are more afraid of you than they are afraid for me, actually. And I was like, well, you know, call me anytime you need help on something with them. And that's how I deal with that part at some point. And the other
Yeah,
thing is that I used to travel a lot to the US. So what I used to do is like I used to bought a lot of cleats or pants or trousers or whatever, all this stuff to play. And when I came back to Panama, I just gave it like, okay, who's the MVP for this? And we raffle all that, and they keep coming on that for that.
yeah. Now, Dia, you
But
brought
yeah.
up a little bit ago about being the strict coach. Ricardo has said something similar about that. Um, But you also said that you get the most hugs and you get the most athletes wanting to come back. And I know all of you have been considered strict or something along those lines. Not mean, but strict. Can you explain a little bit more of why you feel that you get the most not only respect but the engagement with the athletes, which I think is the most important? Because obviously it's not coming from a place of fear for those athletes. They are truly engaged, and I want to ask each of you the why behind that.
So I just to speak to that first, I think because you care. Like
Yes.
so there is always that kid that just runs away. Like I like especially in certain rec programs, you're like, oh, that's that kid. And you're just off like looking at him going, okay, like it's almost like a challenge in my brain of like how can I get this guy to or girl to come back, settle down and be engaged as best as possible. And what I've realized with behaviors is that they act out because they want attention. And it might not be that you need to give them like 10, 20 minutes of your attention, but they want good quality attention. So you going over in there and yeah, like I've given a kid a hard time for speaking over me multiple times. and even followed through with consequences. But then in this, like within 10 minutes of me finish, or in 5 minutes of finishing instruction, walking around, I make a point of going up to that individual and say, okay, you're doing great here. Here's how I can help you. I take my time to coach that individual. And it's like, um, it's about that small interaction means that you care. It means that, hey, look, this person, whatever reason, wants your attention really, really badly, or maybe doesn't get a lot of attention home, maybe has a family of a lot of kids. This is a time that where they feel like they can get this attention. Um, and and then you're like, okay, and you get that 10, like whatever, 10-second coaching piece with them, and suddenly they're engaged again. But you might have to do it again, and you might have to do it again, and you might have to do it again. All right. But you're only taking about 10 to 15 seconds each time with this child, right? And then actively disciplining, because kids, oddly enough, um, when you discipline them, they're like, oh, okay, somebody actually cares what I'm doing. Somebody actually acknowledges what I'm doing, right? I had a whole conversation about respect with one of the athletes. So my husband's Pakistani, just to give some context here, and my kids go to an Arabic bilingual school, and um, they this one girl, like, context was like giving. I was displaying, and this other girl talked about like suddenly picked up their shoe off their feet, physically off the feet, and started smacking it like this, and I'm like, okay, like it was like a like so. In Urdu, chapel is that's sandal for chapel, and so like aunties would pick up the chapel and start smacking their hands, like, oh, I'm gonna like hit you type, that kind of thing. That was the context of what this person was doing, and it wasn't directed at me; it was directed at the person I was disciplining. And then I was like, and then I talked about, okay, is that respectful? Let's talk about this. In your world, I'm an auntie because I'm older than you. Do you show aunties respect? So we had this whole conversation. And then this girl at the end of the program's like, oh, I'm going to buy a volleyball. I'm so excited. Thanks for being my coach. The mom was even sitting in the corner. And that's the thing. The mom was even sitting in the corner. I got this mom coming to me going like, hey, she really enjoyed the program, even though I'm openly providing guidance to the kids. And so it's an interesting dynamic, and there's like a fine line of like discipline and then just being mean, because there's coaches that cross that as well too, where you're flipping over, and now you're going too far. You're not disciplining. You're asserting your authority. Whereas if you walk in as a coach and you're not asserting authority, you're just um, walking in with a presence of respect and expectation, and you set that expectation out right away, then the kids will follow it with some reminders, but the kids will follow it. Um, and again, it's like a little challenge for me. It's like, okay, how can I make this kid care? What's going to add to my next book of like, okay, how can I make this kid care about the sport? Maybe have fun or whatever. So it's always a challenge for me too.
Actually, what I do in at some point it's difficult, and as the said mentioned before, is like you always have that kid that's running away. It challenges you a lot, and at some point, then you figure out that it's because of something. They have a root in something, so it's like maybe it's an absent father, it's an absent mother. They haven't eat at all during the whole day, or they have problems at school. Sometimes they're being bullied at school, or the neighbor or whatever. There always a root about that, and then you need to take the time just to sit and talk to that kid, or person, or whatever, because that's not only for youth. It's like in the whole levels of the sport ecosystem. So the thing is that what I used to do is like, okay, I remember I have this kid that was crazy, was driving me crazy all day, but it was one of the best players. When he committed, he was full committed, but discipline was not something meant to him. But at the end, I remember that I said, look, let's work on that. And you can be the best player if you want. But if you don't do what I'm saying, you're gonna stay bench. And I don't care if I'm gonna lose because you're gonna stay there. And at some point, when and the other thing is that you don't have to threaten. You have to make sure that what you say is gonna be uh, accomplish. Because if you said you're going to stay bench and you put it to play again, he's never going to take responsibility for the action and he's not going to respect you. So what I used to do is like, if I told you you just have to stay there, you will stay there and you will stay there until I tell you when you can move. And the other thing is like, okay, if you are a good guy, if you pay attention to everything I'm saying, then we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be talking about whatever you need. Sometimes they need money because they need to something to do on the school and they have a project, but they don't have the money. Or sometimes they don't have the money just to get to the practice. And I said, okay, who's gonna pick you up today? Oh no, well my mom's not home, and okay, I'm taking you there to your house, or I'm gonna pay the Uber for you. But at the end, is as Dia mentioned, it's because you care. I remember I used to stay until the last kid was picked up from my stadium. I was the last one to leave, and no one stayed there behind after I was leaving. That's something. And the other thing is that you need to care uh, that much that if they are going through something, you have to back it up. And the other thing is that, that kid that was challenging me and driving me crazy today is an accountant that worked for one of these great outed firm in the US. So all those stay quiet, stay there on the bench. And every time I bench, it works. So at the end, because they know that you care, you receive more hugs than just being given everything and letting them do whatever they want.
You know,
Thank you
that's
for.
that's
Oh,
oh yeah, no, no. I think Jeremy and I were gonna say the same thing. First off, a thank you. Um, the and Ricardo, I mean, you guys just nailed it, really, because I know I had a coach who would always say, if I'm not yelling at you, it means I don't care. And that kind of instilled this, okay, all right, that means you would rather have a coach more engaged because if a coach is looking at you and doesn't say anything, it means they've checked out. And it was interesting because there's a parallel here. When I would substitute teach here in San Diego, and there were days when I would be strict, you know, just, hey, phones down, be quiet. If you're talking, I'm going to send you outside, one chance, this and that. To where in the back of my mind, I'm saying, man, maybe I'm being a little too strict or harsh on these kids. But the kids that you're being the hardest on that are acting up, they're the ones who are now responding to you the most. Hey, what's up, coach? Mr. Asante, how are you? High five, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of dance on that line of like stepping out of line to being locked in. And my theory is that some of those kids, they may have never had that strong discipline figure in their house, in their home, whatever. So when they have that in school, it's kind of like, all right, sweet. I get to like, I don't know. Some kids enjoy being regulated. Some kids enjoy that direction. They enjoy being told that no, or we find a correct way to say no and guide them. So I found that when I was more strict and disciplined, and I think I'm being the rude teacher, it's actually them like the opposite. They're saying, hey, thanks for being really tough on us. And, I thought that was a way of like, managing some of the entitlement that we have in the US and then shifting over to teaching with the kids in Ghana, where it's interesting, like the cultural shift where we value the discipline and the strict, like not authoritative, but the strict, like, hey, dude, get it together, stop at the shouting. That's a way that they kind of reciprocate their respect. It's like, okay, if he's yelling at us, if he's really strong and really disciplining us, then that means he really wants us to do well. But it is that fine line of being strict versus being mean, because you can just be, excuse me, you can just be a dick and just be a mean person, and people can see that. But if you're being mean in a way of, we're going to run this drill again and again because you guys have to understand it, then it's like, wait a second, the student is saying they're doing this drill to us again and again. So he knows we get it. So once an intention is established that you care as the leader, as the coach, teacher, professor, whatever, then that's where you get that loyalty. And, it's true. This sport is like, a tough coach is the best preparation for a tough job in the workforce. And it's kind of our duty to, just because you were taught really hard doesn't mean you have to pass it on to the next, but it's our duty definitely to, I don't know, trial run those difficulties you face in life with a tough job, a tough boss, or whatever. Like, okay, then the student says, I can get through this job because my coach had his discipline moments. So I was able to overcome that. And, it's been interesting to navigate that with in Ghana, you kind of have to be that strict, tough, figure because kids will run around and language barrier and, just kids are kids to where in the US, where when you do have this abundance of privilege and abundance of access to resources that some kids don't have, there's that kind of spoiled tendency that you need to lock in on. But just the caring of it. And also as well, in the US here, we have to be very careful of driving a kid to practice, driving a kid home, or like those kind of crossing the line between teacher and family figure. But abroad, it's like, okay, coach, can I get a ride, please? Yeah, hop in. No paperwork, no this and that, because that's another way to ensure the safety. Because another tough reality is we don't know what happens after practice, and even from the field, the court to the pool back home, and it's just our way to do the extra. Buying the food, the practice, waiting until the parents come. If the parents don't come, you take them, paying for the Uber. And, same, like if it's not paying for the Uber, it's saying, Coach, I need to get home, but I need like gas money or I need money for the taxi. And you give them the money for the taxi. And that's, you don't see, I mean, NC2A rules have you played for money before? Like you can't do that. you, we can't do that here, but it's another element of providing that safety to the kids you care about. And it's something where you have to have it in you to be able to understand the line between mean and strict and caring and disciplined. We're not just shouting to shout. We're not just calling a kid out, telling them to stop running. It's a care. You have to have that in you or have experienced that to be able to effectively pass that on.
Yeah, no, and safety is relative to a community and society, right? So, like Asante said, in the US, and I'm sure it's very similar in Canada as well, people might look at, coaches, very worried about a kid's safety if all of a sudden a coach is continuously taking a kid home. But in other areas, that's not always the case. The only way to get the athletes to practices or to competition is to make sure that they have transportation or to make sure that they have food.
Yeah.
Some kids are out there and they're at school all day and they're learning or trying to learn, and then they're at home on the street corner trying to sell fruit or something just so, they can make ends meet for their family. And sometimes having a meal is difficult. And having that, in certain circumstances is such a blessing, and it's so supportive to bring those athletes to practice. But in other areas, like and Dia has coached in these areas. I know Asante has coached in these areas. Having food is not a safety concern, for a lot of the athletes and teams. It's how successful are these athletes going to be? Are they going to be on the road to getting a scholarship at a Division I school in the US, or is the safety going to be something else? And it just changes depending on where you're coaching. And it's just something to consider as you are engaging athletes. What is important to those athletes? We know what's important to the parents because the parents are normally very vocal. to what's important to them, but is that actually important to the kid? Because we all know that the only people who ruin kids' sports are adults, right? But we have to think as coaches and as just program leaders in general, this is what is actually important to the athletes that we're coaching. And Dia said this earlier. She started talking about the World Cup with her players. the The World Cup has nothing to do with volleyball in Canada, but it was very relevant to the athletes that day. And it was very important to them. Just like it's very important for Dia, interacting with athletes about art or books or, you know, with Asante with rapping or DJing. That is something that attracts that kid. So, like I was saying before, it could be food, it could be safety, it could be, a father or a mother figure. It could be so many things that not only attracts athletes, but gives an opportunity to retain them, but how are we engaging them every day? How are we doing what we're supposed to be doing as coaches or as program leaders? And those are the things to really think about. We are running out of time.
Jeremy, can I make one more comment? Can I
Yes,
make one more comment? It's
please,
a small
please.
comment, I promise.
Yeah,
I just hearing from both you guys, Sante and Ricardo, and even you, Dr. Jeremy, it goes back to kind of my why with building sports programs. It's like I don't understand, talking about safety, talking about different expectations in different communities. And it just boggles my mind in Canada and the US on how inaccessible sports are becoming and after school programs are becoming and how we've the adults have taken control, how pickup games don't exist. Like some of these things that should exist in sport, um, that really truly grow a great athlete and also just a great human are not accessible. And the fact that it can be accessible in both where you live, Ricardo and Asante, when you go to Ghana, it's like for me hearing it, it's like you're bending the rules, but I don't think there's rules to be bent with accessibility, depending on the community. And so it's just I think sometimes we have so much in place, especially in some of the like Canada for sure, where there's this has to be in place for this in order for this to happen. And suddenly we have three kids come out because they have 10 different barriers to go through. And it's like, this doesn't need to happen. You need a gym or a field. I operate volleyball on field. I have pop-up nets that are really inexpensive. And we go out in a field and we play volleyball. I don't care what kind of ball we use if we can't get like the correct ball, but we're out there playing volleyball. Or just getting, and I've done every type of sport in the field before, not just like any basketball is the exception, you can't bounce ball in the field. But concrete, I've put a net up there. And so it's so possible to make these accessible, but and grow it, but we're so set in here's how to do it. So it was really cool to hear Asante and Ricardo what you do in your communities because it brings me hope, and I hope that some other programs even in Canada will adapt some of these things and some of these passions just to make it happen. And that's it. Just make it happen, and it'll grow because people love sport. We just have to create the right space for it. So
exactly, exactly. So we are running out of time, and we could talk about these topics for hours. And obviously, I'm going to ask the three of you to come back at another time for another culture roundtable because I think we have so many more important things to talk about. And Dia, I'm going to take that as your closing statement of what you just shared. But before I move on to Ricardo and Asante, are you an artist who coaches, or are you a coach who uses art to reach your athletes?
I am both an athlete and an artist. That's what I have to say. Um, I've done it all my life. I have started art and sport. They've just been in tandem. I'm also an introvert, so I'll flip into like if I'll go 100% into my sports, surrounded by people, and then my poor husband, I'll lock myself in the art room and go, "Okay, guys, no more human time. I'm gone." And so, yeah, no, I am both, and I think we can. I think embracing both is really important because that's a half of me that I bring to, and I also bring sports to that. So my book has sports in it, like that's the thing. So my fantasy book has sports, and then my professional life as somebody in sport has art. So it's a cross worlds.
Ricardo, I'd like to get a closing statement from you, for those in the audience and then those who will be watching later while recording. But before you give us your closing statement, Are you a lawyer who coaches, or are you a coach or a sports leader who uses the your legal expertise when needed to help support athletes?
I need to be honest. I am a lawyer who helps the kids to manage all their affairs, actually. I usually don't coach. Very specific times I coach, but that's it.
Yeah, no, but you definitely use your law background and your coaching background to help lead sports programs, and I think that's where your involvement and the best things that you do for your communities, not only locally but internationally, is through the work that you're doing today. So, what if there was one thing you'd like to say to everyone? What would it be?
That would be that youth sports programs uh, are not individual things. It's a system that is interconnected. School, coaches, athletes, families, and it's a whole ecosystem that needs to work together towards the things that we need to develop. And we need to develop not only athletes, but human beings.
Thank you so much for that, Ricardo. Asante. In addition to your closing statement that you're about to provide, are you a rapper DJ who also coaches, or are you a coach who sometimes raps or DJs for your athletes?
I think I gotta be a rapper that coaches. My theory has always been that, music, hip hop, whatever, it's been a way for a global community to learn English. People learned English through listening to songs and rap. So I'm using water polo as a way to get people to be excited about getting in the water. And me having this strong core as an artist is what allows me to think outside the box, to coach and connect to the kids and make them better people, and also give them that ability to realize, wait a second, you can do more than one thing. We've had pools closed. All right, we're going to swim in the lake. No weight balls. We're going to go to the roadside and buy coconuts, and those are the weight balls today. Finding different ways to explain things the same way I have to think about a way to get a cool punchline out with a rap song or rap lyric. And I think just expanding that. And then even some days we have the DJ and the microphone because we're announcing the scores, but then at halftime, kids want to jump up and grab the microphone and rap to my music or make their own raps. And it's just that diversity and getting the point across. So, man, as much as I love to wear the coach hat and keep a disciplined face when I'm with the kids, they know that I'm an artist, a musician. They know I'm a rapper. And if they're good, I'll give them a few bars and freestyle. But I think that's the biggest thing, is to let them know that you can do more than one thing, and that, of course, I want you to be the greatest athlete in the world. But more than that, I want you to be a great human, great leader, a great citizen, and just, know you're not limited. You can be a good athlete and student and citizen and human and artist and lawyer and doc, whatever. You can do more than one things, and all those are going to narrow your path down. And most importantly, you'll be able to pass that on to the next. And you may start your own water polo team, sports program, whatever. Just providing that example is providing that space where their father figure, where they can feel safe in that environment.
I would have a closing statement myself, but literally all three of you said exactly what I was going to say in some way, shape, or form. So I appreciate each of you for joining us today. I also would like to thank all of those in attendance and those who will be watching the recording of this for taking the time to learn about developing youth sports programs, but more importantly, how to engage athletes, how to create spaces for them and for the community, and also how to create safe spaces for athletes. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.